We're just going to go around the table, introduce everybody so AI knows who we are and you know who we are.
John Hayden.
Michael Sununu, alternate.
Mike Price. Bill Meserve.
Catherine Tarnowski.
Jeff Feenstra.
Sue McKinnon.
Glenn Greenwood, town planner.
Okay, so we've got the first item is we got two zoning changes. We've been working on this. I think this is the third hearing we've had on these. This is hopefully final. I think, Glenn, why don't you just take it around? We've all got copies of it. And you want to just go over it, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, what we did this year was make the necessary changes to this ordinance required by changes in state legislation that happened, that took effect in July of this year, I think. And so we had to make the proposal compliant with that state law. We've done that by establishing what the sizes would be that are compliant with state law, that they can be detached units as accessory dwelling units, as well as attached units. And we've made corrections where we had to in order to state who would be providing information, necessary information to support the construction of an accessory dwelling unit. And the entire process does become one for the building inspector instead of through through a special exception that we used to do it through this BA process that the state told us was no longer a viable. Those changes have been made. The board has looked at this 3 times. I believe this is final version that you want to send to the town meeting vote in March.
But can you just go over, if we didn't do this, what we would have ended up with? I know square footage, it allowed us to address square footage. If we didn't comply with this, where we would be.
Well, the major change was that all towns had to accept the premise that detached ADUs are allowed now. It's still a state law, so it would have, the requirements that came into effect in July would be state law and people would have to abide by them. But you wouldn't have had it in your land use regulations. And that's where most residents go to see what they can and can't do. And so it made sense to make sure that we included everything that complies with the state law in our local ordinance so that folks would be able to see it just by going online on the Newfields website.
Okay, anybody got any questions of Glenn, comment? Well, we'll open up the public hearing in a minute. But the board, anybody else? Good. Pretty good. Okay, so I guess we can open up the public hearing. So if you just give your name, your address and all that.
Up here a second.
Stand up there, go ahead.
I'm Justin Matheny. Hi, I'm 90 Oldie Road. I'm here to talk about the ADU. And I'm here to discuss specifically the language, the change from the current size standard. As it is now, prior to the proposed change, the current ordinance reads, the size of the accessory apartment shall not exceed 1/3 of the living area of the entire dwelling, both units, but shall not be required to be less than 750 square feet. And for math reasons, just to make it easier, I'm not sure why it's written that way, but that equates to essentially whatever the size of the primary dwelling unit is, the other unit can be half of that size. That's how the math works. So it's 1/3 of both. That's how it's written. It's 1/3 of the total area of the ADU and the primary dwelling unit, which equates to the ADU can be half the size of the primary dwelling unit.
I thought the way it was written was it's 1/3 of the existing.
No, this is quoted from our ordinance.
It was awkward language, but it did include both the accessory dwelling unit and the existing structure.
Does not exceed 1/3 of the living area of the entire dwelling. And then it actually says in parentheses, both units. It specifies that.
So that's the kind of stuff that we're cleaning up here.
Sure. So that's what I wanted to address tonight. So, the newly proposed language establishes a fixed maximum size of 950 square feet for the ADU. And I want to clarify that the state law does not say there's a maximum of 950. It says the maximum is 950 unless otherwise authorized by the town. So that, if none of this went into effect, from my reading of the legal, House Bill 7577, pretty much the entire ordinance, that section of the ordinance is superseded by state law, except for that one section with the size. So if we didn't do anything, that would still stand. And I'd like to offer a proposal that balances flexibility and responsibility, and language that avoids being unnecessarily restrictive, while we're still addressing concerns about the ADU size. I want to introduce a clear, reasonable cap, which gives homeowners room to build thoughtfully without opening the door to excessively large units. Because I know there's been discussion here in the last couple of meetings about, what if somebody has a 5,000 square foot house? Not that they would do that, but then they could have a 2,500 square foot ADU, which is not really an ADU. So I just want to establish some context. The Newfields ADU ordinance has objectives fourfold: increasing housing stock for small households, young and old, supporting age in place and diverse living arrangements, protecting safety, stability, and property values, and reducing fluctuations in town service demand. The current 1/3 living area rule was resident adopted and resident approved. I mean, it was voted on. It had to go to a town meeting as an ordinance change. So it does reflect a majority consensus of Newfield voting residents as it stands. So there is a community support for this. And I'm not sure if it was the 2000 or the 2017 update, but in the 2017, warrant on that, I looked at that ballot. It was overwhelmingly passed. It was like 250 to 50 or something. It wasn't close. My perspective is coming from the fact that a lot of families pursue ADUs not for expanding development, but strengthening family stability. We're trying to create multi-generational homes where parents can age in place comfortably, safely, with dignity, and close to the support of their children. Have connections to their grandchildren and their children. It's about care, proximity, long-term well-being. And supporting this philosophy requires very thoughtful design principles. And some of these include, they're not limited to, step-free entrances, zero threshold access, wide hallways and doorways, bedrooms, kitchens, and bathrooms located on one level, open floor plans, support mobility and responder access, adequate space for long-term comfort. National organizations, including AARP, the American Institute of Architects, and the National Association of Home Builders do not recommend a strict minimum ADU size. But they consistently emphasize these, what are called universal design principles. I have a handout. There's actually an AARP document that goes through all the universal design principles, and there's a link on there to it. But it supports, current needs and then future mobility. So, in my opinion, a 950 square foot cap is below the space typically needed to support these design principles, and here's why. The same national organizations consistently point to an average of 1,500 square feet as a practical aging in place benchmark. Our research and architect-led planning, I had an architect work with us on this, demonstrate that an accessible ADU can be reasonably achieved in a 1,400 square foot footprint without compromising safety or comfort. Therefore, I am recommending that if a cap is required, the town considers a 1,400 square foot hard cap and retains the existing 1/3 living area rule. Important change from the 950 flat. This ensures predictable limits. It prevents situations where the ADU equals or exceeds the size of the primary dwelling. It still prevents excessively large ADUs. It still preserves neighborhood character. It protects town infrastructure, and it ensures ADUs remain appropriately scaled relative to the homes they accompany. There was a specific mention in one of the meetings about the accessory dwelling unit being an accessory to the dwelling unit, and I fully support that. I think it shouldn't be bigger or the same size. The 950 square foot flat rule actually could create an unintended outcome. I don't know what the minimum size of houses is in this town, but there could be a situation where someone has 1,000 square foot house And they would be perfectly okay to build a 950 square foot ADU next to that house. And at that point, you've got two same size homes on the property. And then in the same token, somebody with a 5,000 square foot house can only build a little 950 square foot kind of yurt on their property, when they could fit something, larger, not gaudy, but larger, and still have it look respectful, design it well, and allow the space for the people who are going to be there to age gracefully, to use wheelchairs as they age, to have the space they need to be comfortable and move around. So just, to kind of summarize, the strong guidance from national trusted organizations and my firsthand experience working with an architect, make one thing very clear. Single size does not serve every family thoughtfully, doesn't serve future needs. And I think that we need a flexible standard that's paired with a reasonable cap that offers the right balance. It supports smart growth, protects community character, and it allows ADUs to be designed for real world safety, for comfort, and for long-term mobility needs. So I just wanted to make sure that that was considered. I didn't know if that had been.
So your proposal would be that the accessory dwelling could be up to 1/3 of the existing home size.
1/3 of both, the existing 1/3 rule. So of the existing home size.
Half of the existing home.
That's the rule we have right now.
No, I'm asking you what you would.
I'm proposing to keep the exact same rule we have now, which was voted on by the town and approved. But right now it's unlimited. There is no cap. I'm proposing that we add a cap, but we add a cap at 1,400 square feet, because my research and working with an architect, trying to design a space that fits these universal design principles, 1,400 square feet was, after we cut everything out, moved things around, changed doorways to odd angles, that was where we fit. That's where we got, without cutting out other, other rooms. I mean, this does not have a dining room. It does have a bathroom and a toilet, right? A second toilet, because the consideration was there's two people living in a house. This isn't the mom died, dad comes to live with you and he's, over your garage. This is your two parents want to move up and age there and be near the grandkids. So if there's two people there as they age, as we get older, need to use the bathroom. Sometimes we need to use the bathroom at the same time. And so it's just a consideration. It's one of those comfort things. It's like you add an extra toilet. So, just to point out that I don't know if that seems excessive to have an extra toilet in an ADU, but that was the reasoning behind that thought. But even then, if you remove that, you maybe get rid of 75 square feet. It's just a toilet that's just big enough of a room to fit a wheelchair into. So it just didn't seem to me that in any of the other discussions, there had been any thought about, well, has anyone actually gone through and done drawings and seen what we can fit in this square footage? It was just, the state said 950. We don't want huge ADUs. Totally understand that. But then, where can we be in the middle? What's reasonable, right?
I think the third came from the state previously. I don't think we said third.
If it did,
When ADU came out, it was a third. I don't remember us. So I don't.
I can't clarify that, Bill. My first thought is that isn't correct. It could have been.
I don't remember us debating a third. Does anybody else got any questions, comments, or?
I just want to say that the other towns do not have a 1/3 rule. So if it was a state law, then other towns would have to have a 1/3.
State law, I don't think state ever mandated those types of ratios. I think that was a decision of the town at the time.
So Glenn, would somebody coming in saying, I want to go from 950 to 1,400 would require a variance?
Yes.
So that there is an option, a mechanism out there.
Well, a variance is a
Yeah.
hard standard to get. And if the desire is to get a variance from a standard like that, I mean, there are different requirements. State law has over the years softened its aspect on variances for dimensional requirements so that the hardship criteria isn't as firm as it is for a use variance, but it's still a hard criteria to accomplish.
And it's an entirely different meaning of hardship, and it doesn't speak to the issue of use of space and, aging in place. It actually speaks more about the property itself.
Right, the dimensional.
You've got boulders and you've got water and you've got the.
Anybody asking for a larger ADU size under a variance is going to be hard pressed because they likely have a larger lot. And so you're going to be real hard pressed to identify a hardship of that lot versus here.
Right.
Absolutely.
Not going to happen. Let's be honest. Well, just a couple comments. I can appreciate you pointing out that the town voted overwhelmingly for the existing language, but to be perfectly honest, the town votes overwhelmingly for almost every zoning recommendation that this planning board has made over the years here. So I don't think that carries a whole lot of weight here. Look, as somebody who has an ADU, I have a 936 square foot ADU, and it's big. I have a full kitchen in there. I have a full bathroom in there. It is accessible. I have a bedroom. I have an office in there, a large living room space. It's a big ADU. I can appreciate what you're asking for, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but I have to be convinced here that us making this larger ADUs makes a whole lot of sense to me.
And to me, it does seem like the state came up with a 950, that there must have been considerable debate at the state level saying 950 statewide makes sense.
I think it's, if I could give so if you've ever seen how septic design works, septic design plans, and they say on them, this is the state minimum, towns may have additional requirements. So I think this is a minimum thing. This is more like they're trying to figure out what are we going to compel towns to do? And I think the consideration was more 950 is a reasonable thing to compel a town to do if they don't otherwise have their own rules. They do have a 750 requirement, but I think it was just their kind of average, right?
I guess the other way I look at this is I think there's been considerable debate made around the 950. We can always change in the future the 950.
Mhm.
So, if we start seeing there's a need or a want and we study it more, it can always change. And I guess, Glenn, at this point, to go from 950, which is a key point, up to something like 1400.
It would require a second. We
And
have time to do that, but it would require a second.
I have a thought on if I'm thinking of this through correctly, someone like myself with a smaller home, my aging parents would have an unfair disadvantage. Because if we kept the 1/3 of the entire, they couldn't get more than 750, even if that was better for them, if they were in wheelchairs.
Sure.
That 1/3 would make it such that people who have smaller homes, regardless of the size of the lot, have their family members at a disadvantage simply because of the size of the original home, without consideration to things like aesthetics and setup that could make, say, a 950 square foot ADU look like basically a garage with a room over it that you can, from the street, just looks like a house with a garage. And so that would put many people with smaller homes at a disadvantage for no real reason.
The consideration to put that back in was from meetings I have watched with and heard discussions from this board saying, very similar things. There literally was said, the accessory dwelling unit is an accessory to the dwelling unit. So it was just to kind of support that consensus. I agree with you. I think that is an unfair, yes, yeah, absolutely. But there are considerations for the look and all that.
As far as the 1400 square foot, I've been looking at a lot of condos with my son lately for the last few years. Not seen one that's been.
Right. Are they
800 square
Are
foot?
they ADA compliant?
They've all been first floor, no curbs.
I have the handout I have here actually.
That's big.
The handout I have here actually has the dimensional requirements for hallways and doorways, and that's what we used to design this. So, I mean, yeah, I get it. I know what you're saying. But we did this according to this and put those principles in practice, which all of these, all of these organizations recommend, and that's what we got. So.
I just want to back up to the 1/3 combination of both being half the size of the dwelling unit. I can almost guarantee that that was never the intent of this board putting that language in the ordinance. We would have just said the ADU can be half the size of the building. We've had planners in our past, unfortunately, that have mixed the language around a little bit, and we've spent a lot of time in meetings correcting things that have been inserted into our ordinance to correct situations like that. So frankly, I'm a little shocked that the ordinance would be interpreted that someone could build an ADU half the size of their house. And I don't think that this board should leave that language in the existing ordinance. And I don't think that the town overwhelmingly voted for that, knowing that they could build an ADU half the size of their house. That's,
And I know recently the ZBA just went through one where the entryway came into question to get the 1/3. So they've been the 1/3's been out there. You were on ZBA. Did you ever see a ADU more than around 1,400 square feet? They've all been.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
I mean, has anybody come before this board in the last several years?
we don't get ADUs.
There was an ADU last year, because I actually went to the hearing, but I don't remember.
ZBA.
Anybody else got any questions from the audience, comments, or?
And also, I just want to say, like, the 1,400 is what I'm putting forward here because that's what I found. I just wanted to start a conversation about the 950 and make sure that even if it's 11 or 12, that someone had considered, like, we didn't just throw out what the state gave us. I mean, because we have to do that with the rest of the ordinance. This is the one place where we actually have a chance to discuss it and decide what's reasonable for Newfields. So I just wanted to make sure that that was discussed and we actually thought about all the different perspectives on it.
I think in our discussions, we had the chair of the ZBA here. He was the one who talked 950. And he has a history around every ADU that's come since ADU's been around, Kent's been around. So I don't think he had any concern about anything more than 950. I think in his mind, I want to speak for him, but he was one that said 950. And so I think, that seemed reasonable to him. And it hadn't presented a problem in the past.
The hearings I was present for on the ZBA were about lines and dimensional requirements. They weren't about the actual ADU size. That was the issue. It was a consideration, it was workable, but what they were there for was a variance on a different aspect of the project.
Any more comments or? Okay, thanks. Thanks for taking it. Thanks, Bill. Okay, I guess anybody else got any more comments on the ADU part of it? One parking space. Glenn, is this language for septic similar to what you're seeing in other communities, having the agent? I think that makes sense.
A large part of it is taken directly from the statute. The only difference is that we work with an agent and we can outline who the agent is. And
then the last two things, the definition, 2.1 accessory dwelling unit to read what? The next page of it.
yeah, it will read what is just underneath it at 212.
Definition found in 414 accessory dwelling units.
Right.
It's the other part that we have to do.
Change to the ADU definition. It's going to end up in our ordinance. we might forget that it was actually in our definitions. So in this case, if we ever make a change to the ordinance,
It'll flow.
well,
It's going to go right back.
The other thing I think I recall from last month is how to compute the actual living space. I think that was defined by ceiling heights. And so if you have a cape, you can only measure over so far to 5 feet or, is that what I recall?
No, I didn't.
I don't remember that.
They don't-
I remember that conversation. And that was about what counts as living space and what doesn't for the computation purposes.
It's not the.
But had-
We have definitions of what is considered livable space in the ordinance.
I think that's what-
And I think that's.
And I believe the ZBA takes that into account when evaluating that as these come before this.
Now, remember, the ZBA won't have anything to do with this.
But the building inspector.
What's that?
Will own the.
Yeah, well, what,
Nothing to do with this.
no, well, now, now.
It will just be the building.
My point is, we have those definitions of what is considered livable space.
Because remember, we said it's heated garage considered,
Right.
and no, it's not.
Hallways.
Right.
Freeways,
Uh,
wall space or view walls.
It's not livable space. It's some other term here.
Here. Someone who simply.
Well, I think that the building inspector in reviewing the plan is going to apply whatever the building code
Whatever's
said.
on the checklist.
Correct.
Right, so if there's a checklist that asks specifically about ceiling height and garage space, storage space, things that don't apply.
Living space.
It's going to be living space.
Right. Right, so that could be right on the checklist that the homeowner is looking at together with the building inspector to look at the project itself. So they're on the same page, literally to check a box to say
We did. We did.
something went wrong.
I thought I did.
You did earlier.
Was, sorry.
Confirm.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody has to basically go back and say it again.
Well, Comcast is playing around this today. No, mine was almost, it's not working. I think it's still out of.
We can, as long as it's recording, we can post it later.
Okay. Okay, so everybody comfortable with this? So I guess we need a motion second to move it to the warrant.
I'll move the accessory dwelling unit amendments to our ordinances I'll make a motion to move it to the warrant as written.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. So now we're going to talk about multifamily in the commercial district. So Glenn, fire away.
Right. This is actually the first public hearing for this. And in advance of this public hearing, according to state law, we had to send a letter to everybody who's in this district. So Sue was good enough to get that mailing list together and sent out a letter letting folks know. I don't know if anybody in the audience received that letter. You did. Good.
I'm here.
Excellent.
You just wanted to have.
It works.
It worked. So that state law, which is a few years old, probably 8 years old now, is just an effort to make sure if the town does propose changes district-wide, that folks in the district, if there are less than 100 property owners in that district, that everyone is made aware of what's going on. So that step was taken and this hearing shouldn't be challenged in any way from that aspect. And what this is in a response to is a direct state law that got passed in July, but doesn't come into effect as a state law until July 1st of next year. From this year now. Thank you, Sue. So they were granting us the state was granting us one town meeting to do something about this. And so what we have done is put together a proposal that allows or the construction of multifamily housing in our commercial zone using the standards that are listed here. And so what it says is there's an increase in density, for a number of dwelling units for, each 1 acre of developable land. Says that a percentage of those have to be workforce housing. And it gives standards for frontage and lot depth, and also does include the requirement that since these structures are located in our commercial zone, that we anticipate that the first floor of such new units will actually be retail use, or there's expansion of our commercial use to allow educational, institutional, and not-for-profit, non-residential uses, which all could be on the base floor of these proposed multifamily structures. And that's the concept that's for public discussion this evening.
This is a first public hearing, but we've discussed this also.
Yeah, you've talked about the concepts behind this previously.
Anybody got any questions on the? One thing I had, Glenn, is we talked about defining workforce housing last time per the RSA definition. I mean, in the notes, it said RSA 63479. I just looked up and that says nothing's there. Do we still? I mean, it shows under RSA 674:58 to 61.
Yeah, we can add that reference. It wouldn't be a substantive change because it's simply additional information. It doesn't change any of our,
Just referencing the state statute.
it doesn't change any of the standards that are offered here.
So Bill, that RSA is incorrect. I thought,
I just looked up 674:79. It says nothing's there.
674:58.
58 to
To 61, yeah.
Okay, anybody on the board got any comments, questions?
Just out of curiosity, does the way that it's worded account for the lower level being something like storage facility? Potentially rented garage space that people park vehicles in or store things in? Does that fall under what we're talking about? I'm from the why I'm looking at less information than I think we talked. You said nonprofit, you said
Yeah, no,
educational,
we
but
actually added added those to the description of multifamily development
I see.
in the use matrix.
Okay, but does that preclude storage units or storage space or things like that? Or does that?
I think that they would still be allowed if they were, as long as they were allowed in the commercials.
Yeah.
Which I think they are.
So
Yeah, they are.
you could still have just physical office space underneath.
Build one of these.
So-
I want to build one of these in town.
Storage units up on 108, they could build multi-family above them.
You-
Not saying they will, but
If it's an allowed commercial use.
I'm just trying to picture in my mind what this might look like
Yeah.
and how that is helpful if we are looking at how to increase commercial use in town on a limited amount of property and increase affordable housing in a town where it's scarce. Potentially, if you have a rental unit upstairs, you could separately rent a garage space for your vehicle or storage space or living, like it could all be designed around the idea of living versus purely say retail space or educational space or, public service
as long
space.
as it's considered part of the commercial allowances, yeah, you could do that.
So it might not look like a strip mall with apartments upstairs. It could look like something.
It could look like something.
It could look wholly residential and still satisfy it being commercial at the first level.
Correct. Correct.
And it's gonna have to meet our architectural standards.
Sure.
Which
Yeah.
we've had good luck with making things look decent.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, I'm open, I just want to open up the conversation about the density, because we're, allowing six units per acre. Not exactly robust.
It's not. It goes up to 8 if there's workforce housing.
Yeah, which is still not robust on a per acre basis. Would we consider going more? I'm not advocating for more or less, but I just thought we should have a discussion about it, because at the end of the day, developer's going to look at this and probably say, that's not enough units per acre to make it worth my while. I can't pencil that out because the cost of development is just too much, and I get too few units for developing that parcel.
We had that discussion in Brentwood. So I'll be very upfront. And so we had developers come and talk with us, and they said that they would be able to make the 6 and 8.
Oh, they would, okay.
And they
No problem.
we actually had one developer go the distance and prepare a plan for us.
Great, okay.
Property in town based upon what the soils were on that property and what limitations would be there. And they could do it on the 6. It made it didn't, because of the constraints on that particular lot, it didn't encourage them to try to get 8 units though and get any workforce housing, but it worked for them getting six
Okay.
for each developable acre. And I think that there were only 2.5 developable acres after wetlands were removed. It's a site on 125, and in Brentwood, almost every site on 125 has wetlands on it.
Great.
Glenn, do you think we need definitions of educational, institutional? Somebody could come in and say, school. Well, I want
I
to,
think you can go either way. It's the planning board's responsibility to interpret the zoning ordinance. So if you felt comfortable that you knew what these things were, I don't think you need to say anything else. But if you didn't, you can absolutely add.
could you see somebody twisting educational into something?
Every zoning ordinance
Yeah.
gets attempted to be twisted into something. And no matter how clearly you write it, there at some point during the life of a zoning ordinance,
There'll be a lawyer. Right?
if there is no lawyer, there'll be a very clever developer who has a different mindset.
And time and technology is going to change,
Yeah.
and new things are going to be construed that we can't even imagine.
Well, and to the point we made earlier, if at a future date, next year, we find that these definitions are inadequate, we can always make a motion.
So just for discussion, what do we see institutional mean?
I took that more like a nonprofit organization.
Ooh,
Or like the Richie McFarland Center.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, exactly.
We should be having this discussion.
Hospital,
Come,
Yeah.
hospital.
yeah. Healthcare, yeah.
Group
Okay.
home?
It's like pornography, when you see it.
Yeah. That was my
Determine
first
where that
pass, was writing adult entertainment in Rollinsford. You had to keep it
That was fine.
square feet array and all this.
The zone, in board in Ipswich, Mass, we had to identify a zone
You can't,
for adults.
can't rule it out. You have to control it.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted that. I think that's something that maybe for next year, we start talking about, can we better define it? So I guess all we're saying on this is just put the RSA for the definition of workforce housing and
Which is, that's an editorial contextual change. So
so anybody, public hearing, anybody comments?
Like to stand.
Yeah, you give us your name and everything.
Okay. First off, I'd like to thank the planning board for doing a good job over the years I've been here. I think you do your job as well. I have a few questions and some concerns. One is I read these RSAs, they're kind of,
You just give us your name.
Richard Messner, Route 7108. So I'm more on the stratum side of things, which is probably more restrictive for these things anyway, because of the tributaries that's behind us. But anyway, one of the things I want to say is that when I look at these things and I start seeing jargon already put in for things that maybe don't need to be specified, because some of these things in the RSA, which is, it's actually pretty vague in the RSA, what actually is required totally and what's not required. So when you start saying educational institution, nonprofits and stuff, there could be a lot of different things potentially, being proposed. So you're already starting to restrict it down that way. It would be better not to have that in there. That's just from my personal perspective. And when you talk about multifamily and dwelling densities in this town, I was the one who spoke against bringing the water and sewer out to 108 way back when. And because I told it would change the character of the town in general, because we got a lot more development. Now it's starting to happen because they're forcing it to happen at the state level. They're telling you, you must do X, Y, Z. So one of my concerns is, and I don't think this is possible, but it might be, is rather than having a permitted, have a S as opposed to a permit. That way you get essentially somebody coming with a proposal, and then the butters that they're there who might have concerns about that proposal have the ability to come in and have those hearings. So I don't know, it says permitted, but is it not clear to me if it's permitted to be permitted, or if you could put the S there, in which case they'd have to come to the town and have a proposal that then goes essentially to a hearing. So that's one of my concerns there. The other issue is when we talk about adding infrastructure here, when they talk about infrastructure, what do they mean by infrastructure? It's not totally clear what that means. Could be, infrastructure with support to water, sewer, drainage, that type of thing. I think they specify out in some of the readings I've done that these are things that would have to be taken into account. But if they're going to do wells, if you actually look and say it for every acre developable, so assume that you have a minimum lot, 3 acres. Okay, that's what you've specified for this. It's 3 acres, not 2, which is currently the commercial district, I guess. How many plots in the commercial district meet the requirements for this? That's one of the questions I had. I was trying to figure out where in this, because it's a small district. It's not big district.
Very small.
And how many parcels actually meet the requirements of 3 acres, barring the fact you have wetlands and all that stuff. I didn't figure all that out, even though I'm an engineer. I just don't have the time to do that right now. Anyway, I think that's a question I had, is how many of these 3-acre parcels could be developed this way? And if you're going to develop them, the number that you said density, you're specifying density now. So for 3 acres developable land, let's say it's 3 acres of developable land with no services, no water, no sewer, you're going to allow up to 18 units to be built on this 3-acre parcel. 18 units, okay. 18 units is an impact on the town. Okay, now yes, you could try to extend the water out and do that. That's a big cost. That's not cheap. Developer could be forced to do it if you wanted to have the developer do it. But if you allow the workforce housing, that would increase that to 24 units potentially for that 3 acres. Now, what's the impact on, we're a donor town to schools? If you have school, this is going to raise taxes. You don't have the industrial base to support it like other towns might have. So I can see that being a problem if you start specifying densities specifically at this level right now. So that's one of my concerns. And where I am, I came to this town in 1998. So I've been here a long time. I like my area. I don't want to see a lot of huge development happening. And I'm glad you have a 35 at least foot top list in terms of height, because some of the towns, as you know, are going way up. Just go into Portsmouth, go into Exeter, see what the problems they're starting to have. Go down to Derry, see what they're having problems with. Sewers, they don't have all the sewer infrastructure. They have septics, they have. And if you were to try to build here, if you know what it takes to 18 units to build a septic for that, that's not cheap. That's real expensive. And also drilling a well. If you need well water, that's, so about 100 grand is what I've been thinking about when I was looking on my research for doing that. So getting people to do this is probably going to be hard anyway, I imagine. So those are just some of my concerns. And I don't like to see that. I came here from Stratton, I actually moved from Stratton. And I really like the quaintness of the town. I don't want to see that really character evaporate, but I don't see anybody really coming here to build shops underneath and build things above, just for workforce housing, things like that. And I know we have to do it because the state's mandating, but I'm just trying to give the board my thoughts on what should be considered in terms of what the impacts overall would be if all of a sudden we had 5 parcels, let's say in this district, all of a sudden putting in 18 units, and deciding it was viable just because they could make money and turn the key as a developer. And I'm seeing that in other towns. So that's really what I wanted to say today. I also think when you start putting stuff together in jargon, I'm an engineer, so when I see minimum side yards 50 without what it is, it's foot, I imagine. So it's linear feet or a floor area covering 625 square feet, I imagine. Those are just nitty picky things, but I think it should all be totally accurate, especially if you're going to send it out to the town. It should be totally accurate. So anyway, that's what I had to say.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody got any other comments? Anybody questions? Glenn, part of my understanding of this is we developed this so that it wasn't challengeable. Is that a correct statement? That we had to offer something, but we couldn't make it so unreasonable. Like you just said, 6 units, a developer has said that's a reasonable.
Right. The goal of this proposal is to comply with the state law. And the state law says that we have to make provision for multifamily housing in our commercial zone. And make no mistake when they say that, if you don't make any provision, then somebody who wants to build multifamily housing will come in, take you to court and say, you don't have any provisions. You want to do this. This is our plan. And their plan could be for many more units than 6 per developable acre, and would likely be for many more units than 6 per developable acre. And so the need, the sort of the tightrope that you're walking here is to not expose yourself to ignoring the state law, because all it will take is one energetic developer to determine that the town doesn't have any standards at all. And they'll just come in and they'll find someone willing to sell property in the commercial zone, and they'll develop it to their maximum extent. So the goal of this is to have a developable matrix that isn't out of scale for the town of. That's the goal.
So if we would have a density of 2 units per 1 acre lot, I'm guessing a developer would come in here and say, this is unreasonable, and we'd end up in court.
Someone could come in and say 6 is unreasonable.
Okay.
But the testimony at the State House on this talked about that very issue, that towns certainly shouldn't propose things that are not viable. Because if they're not viable, a judge is going to respond the same way. They're going to simply say, yeah, you did pass something. And yeah, it basically was the same density as your single family residential. And that is not what the law was required.
At the same time, they actually purposely left density to the towns
They did.
on purpose.
Understanding that some towns have,
Greater density and can handle greater density and
some towns have sewer and water and don't.
Right.
Because that's the biggest driver for density.
Right. It's a septic.
Exactly.
Okay, anybody more comments? We good with this? Just adding the RSA?
Consideration about making it an S rather than a D. But say, try to.
My concern would be somebody will challenge that.
Yeah.
That again, with it,
This does not prevent it.
it doesn't, right, but the intent of the state was to basically require everybody to allow.
That's right.
Yeah, as a right. I would be hesitant to do that. I understand your point, and I think it's actually somewhat creative. But I'm not sure I want to challenge, I want to create a legal conundrum that this town will solve.
I think we know we've got pretty solid setbacks. And like you mentioned, heights. And we also have these architectural standards that,
And the infrastructure limitations,
yeah, that, if somebody wants to put water and sewer out there, we gotta go find some water first. So I guess we're at, is motion or any other questions
We
you got?
speak to the concern about unnecessarily restrictive language by adding more jargon and definition. Did we kick that around and decide if that's helpful feedback, or if we want to leave it alone, or if we're adding that language in a way that complicates things unnecessarily?
well, I mean, to the point he raised about, for example, not having notes of feet on minimum depth. This actually goes to a table that actually specifies.
It does specify.
It is, I get it that in this doesn't, but the tables in the ordinances will actually.
When it's put in the text,
Yes.
the columns actually have that.
And we actually started out with 2 other pages of information, townhouse and all that stuff that we got rid of, right?
Yeah, got rid
We
of
said that was just too much.
But I think your point is more to the addition of educational, institutional, nonprofit, that part, and that's something that you brought up.
It is. That's something that
And the purpose was why?
to provide flexibility for how that first floor unit could be used.
There's no.
No.
You could put multifamily without it at all.
No, we,
We're actually making it somewhat more restrictive.
You can put yourself for a challenge, make that too.
But
What did you say, Richard?
There's no requirement to have retail space on the first floor.
Yes, there
yes,
is.
there is.
Yes.
I read it differently. I read it.
Well,
no, last line.
Because
Last line is.
Multi-family structure should
Be located on the
second floor of commercial
So that's
business
for you. That's your decision.
with retail and office use occupying the first
The
floor.
house bill, that's not a restriction that you have to do that.
Correct.
No.
We are.
We are.
Now,
We are requiring that because to a point that you raised earlier, we want more commercial in our commercial.
Right.
Because that can support things like more kids in the schools. And so we are somewhat, we're saying, okay, if we're going to do this, then we still want, because we don't have a lot of commercial space in town. We don't want to lose the opportunity to require that in the commercial zone.
I mean, rented the, by Dunkin' Donuts, they can't. That's.
Yep. No, understood.
And I think we toss that around knowing that we have such a small commercial area that it wouldn't seem unreasonable to say, yeah, you got to have some.
I'm not opposed to, I'm just bringing it up. That's not a requirement.
Correct.
So.
No, it's a preference of
You prefer.
the town. Yes.
Rather than have an apartment complex.
Oh, and just an apartment complex without any commercial. Yes. Yep.
That's.
And
I understand.
And the warrant article would include that the added language would go in the grid.
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Okay, is there a motion?
Accepted as presented.
Except adding the RSA for
Oh,
workforce housing.
correct.
RSA reference.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor?
I,
Are we, now that we got these done, how are we going to educate the public? We ran into that
so
conundrum last day before the last election.
So one suggestion here, and because we're restricted in terms of the language on the warrant, right? You can't put descriptions of these on the warrant, I believe. Isn't that correct? One thing and I was talking to Sue about this today, I would suggest that the planning board, one, have the language of all of these at deliberative session. Not that deliberative session is going to talk about them. But maybe somebody in the crowd, after we work through the warrants, might want to just raise, hey, by the way, what about the zoning warrants?
So through the
And
moderator,
have,
can that be done?
No,
Not at the.
not as part of the deliberative. No, we can't debate them, but they can ask the question. And the moderator can say, the warrants for the zoning are not to be discussed here at deliberative, but please recognize there's language there. Talk to the planning board about them.
Hmm.
Those warrants, though, are all being done under the requirements of the state statutes that passed last year, and the town needs to address them, and leave it at that for now. At the very least, it makes everybody aware of the fact that the reason these are coming down is that these are required for the town to do. And everybody will see them there. It's the best way we can educate everybody about this in one spot, in my opinion.
Do you think there's any advantage? I hate it, but to put it on the 3 Facebook pages.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Glenn, if you could draft something like the intro per RSA, whatever, we're required to address this, and here's how we addressed it.
We've done a lot of work in Brentwood on creating outreach materials. And I can
Tell you where they end up.
modify
Yeah, that would,
those to
Plagiarize?
reflect information. I would say modify, because it's less, it's less angry tinted than the word you just used. But I mean, it would not be a heavy lift for me to do that. And I think I'm not the person to ask to put something on Facebook because I'm not a
No, no, no.
social media person.
Right.
But this would be a piece of information that could be,
Like a flyer info.
it's their fact sheet.
If you circulate it to us, we'll take on the job of basically having materials.
We'll send it to Sue to send to planning board members.
and Sue can put it out on the town web, and then I think, well, like we saw last year, we need to put this out on Facebook. I hate it, but we
Well,
have to do it.
My problem with Facebook is,
Let's start.
what's that?
Let's go.
As soon as that goes out there, there will be people critiquing it with potentially false information. And is there going to be one of us that goes out there and corrects them?
Mhm.
We really can't anyway. So,
I don't know if that's a great idea.
well,
Facebook have a mechanism to disable comments on?
Highly recommended.
The town Facebook pages are not run by the town,
Right.
run by other individuals, so we have no control over that.
or is it just adequate to have Sue put it out in the
In the town email.
Newfields email and say, this is it?
Like a flyer.
And this is, that's the, I
And
mean,
who to
what happened,
contact if
what
you have
happened
questions.
last year is we had somebody put something out a day before that was not aligned with what the whole story was. And I was in there at the time and we scrambled to correct it. So it's just like, if somebody wants to do it, I guess they can still do it, but,
But the information from this board really should come through the town. I don't think we should be engaging social media for.
I think the idea is, yeah, I think just give it to Sue with a write-up and it goes out and this is it.
Disseminate it to the town and then if people just put contact to town hall and if people want to reach out about it that way, then that would be appropriate.
Good.
Social, and if someone puts it on social media outside of this
Mhm.
board, then that's out of our control. Yeah.
And if it looks like a flyer, looks like it's, it has a border and it has a nice font, it's gets someone's attention, it's got some color, then they might notice it. And these are the basic facts. And if you have any questions about it, here's the contact information. So it keeps it clean, but also is not just a bulleted list on an email kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So I think that would be helpful. And if it shows up somewhere else and we have an opportunity to speak to it, we can comment, please direct your questions to so-and-so. Please direct your questions to
Well,
so-and-so.
we shouldn't really be
It doesn't
saying,
have to be us.
no,
But I mean, I
we
think
shouldn't be
that's
answering
someone
any
at home.
questions anyway.
If someone at home who would make that. call.
I think the fortunate thing is these are, I don't want to say they're less controversial than the issue that was from last year, but last year there were particular parties in town who, were gunning for those particular. I don't think that that's going to be the case this time. I just don't. And especially even if the messaging is,
No.
without a doubt, you never know.
You can never tell.
But again, I think if the message gets out here that the town is required under state statute to make these types of changes, that's going to be the most important thing that gets out there because people understand these have to happen.
Okay, so Glenn, you're gonna put something together. Sue's gonna send it out. We also, we'll have a few days to comment on it. Sue can start selling it.
Okay,
Okay? Good. Geez, we did a good job on that this year. How about a CIP update?
How about I haven't, until zoning is over, I haven't done anything.
That's fair.
Go.
Yes, but-
Review and approve December minutes. Everybody get a chance to look at them? Motion?
Motion to accept as written.
A second? John?
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Anybody got anything else?
hey, Bill,
What?
that RSA though?
Yes, you gotta.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Have you-
Oh, in the ordinance?
No, in the minute, what are?
I'm sorry.
Correct.
So I hate to continually bring things up, but driving home the other night on 108,
Stay with you.
I,
Ran out of fuel.
I,
Only to the mobile station for
No.
Powerball.
no, closer to the Newmarket border, the property at whatever the number is, 70, the Muddy River, we discussed lighting, outdoor lighting in their site plan approval process. And when the parking lot was introduced and approved, there wasn't to be any additional lighting. There is a light pole out there that has 3 giant flat panels on it that not only illuminates the parking lot, but it illuminates the entire property boundary and the adjacent property as you drive down 108. It's like, whoa. So I feel that maybe reaching out, Glenn, to Mr. Parsonok and mentioning to him that we have a lighting standard and that he needs to comply, maybe he'll be amicable to that and we won't have to go.
Well, I've handled that so well with the mobile station. And I'm so happy that you're suggesting that the difference being, I do talk to Mr. Pasternak once a month.
Yeah, it's just blatant.
Talk to him in writing on this one?
Yeah. I mean, because they're gonna push back on that, of course.
It is,
So
What's the rationale is what? Parking safety?
I'm assuming that's what they're gonna say.
you can see like
For safety
the
purposes.
trees on the boundary at night, the entire tree, the whole height of the tree is illuminated, like the entire property line as you drive by. It's just,
All right, well, that sounds like some part of site plan.
And to your point, it's either additional lighting or it's not, and it was on the plan and it got approved, and holy crap, this is what it looks like. It really is.
it's not there prior. It's something that was added.
You got a lot of night work to do here, Glenn.
Well, is Great Bay mobile file in town hall for review by the select board because it got kicked over to us?
Sue is, yes, it absolutely did. And Sue tells me that I have that file, but I can't find that file.
So I saw the actual file. Sue, you showed me the file and I pulled out all the pictures and all the stuff from it.
Was that the file?
That's the file, right? The Great Bay.
So I don't have the file. Because I had torn what is already an offensive office.
Right.
apart Looking for that file.
When you were gonna write the next letter
Yeah.
and you thought you had the file, I thought maybe you took it because you had another letter you were gonna write that didn't end up happening. And we don't want to have the precedent that we don't actually follow through on these things.
Correct.
For the second person who's gonna get a letter and says, oh, every time I drive by Great Bay Mobile, they have neon backlighting. This seems to be allowed. Why are you worried about lighting on trees?
Right.
Fair question.
It is a fair question.
So we know where the file is, thank goodness.
So
I
we.
guess I better-
Sounds-
I have to find.
Very
I
happy.
did not take it with
I'm
me.
very happy.
One other thing, Sue, you brought up Garvey's approval has been more than a year. What,
Today,
what's the implications that
Sunsets, doesn't,
It does.
the sun's
Does.
But it's not a 1-year sunset, is it?
unless he asks for an extension.
Unless he asks for an extension.
he hasn't, so.
Oh, it's a 1 year without an extension?
Yeah. If we haven't told him that though, I'm not, do we really want to be the one to tell him that it's expired and we didn't tell him it was going to expire?
Is it our responsibility to?
Well, because we're a good board.
We are a good board, but I don't understand why we would be in the position of trying to remind an applicant that their 1 year is about to expire. That's on them. That's not on us.
I so hate that attitude, but okay.
That's just my opinion. Just my opinion. It's not, that may not reflect the opinion of the entire board.
Put it this way,
My opinion.
there's, as a board matter, yeah, there's no, I tend to agree, I don't think that the board should be patrolling the 1 year mark on all of these constructions. But there's nothing preventing anybody here, if they so wish, to inform Mr. Garvey that his unofficially. Anybody here can pick up the phone and,
Is the only thing that he hasn't accomplished the paying of the impact fee?
More than that.
Because he gave us the revised plan.
No.
No, he hasn't given us.
Didn't get a Mylar.
No, we haven't got a Mylar. He
We-
gave us a revised plan.
Revised plan would have some notes on it that you asked him to put on it.
Mhm.
I haven't seen it unless you saw it.
I'm sorry.
We'll look again.
Gary Longhouse.
but there's a lot of boxes he hasn't checked.
Well, certainly there's certainly the fee box he hasn't checked.
No.
But
He hasn't
this
checked.
board's responsibility isn't to inform every person that their 1 year is coming due.
So Glenn,
That's legitimate.
talking that now, if he comes back, he starts with all these new changes.
If it's really,
Impacts. That's right. If it goes into,
if he has lost if his approval has lapsed, he would have to reapply.
Under the existing, at the time, not at the old time, the new,
after March or whatever, it would be with, but how that's,
But does it impact
No,
his
it's good.
property?
well, he
We haven't made.
he could put in multifamily now.
saying maybe he's waiting to
Correct,
see the outcome of the public.
absolutely.
Okay, that is just frightening thinking.
Well, that's
maybe he had this.
possible.
In mind.
I can't imagine that was on his radar.
Okay, anybody, Colby, you got a question?
That wasn't on.
Colby Hartman, 189 Exeter Road. I just wanted to inform the board, make sure you're all cognizant that as of the start of the year, we changed town council. Derek Durbin is no longer our town attorney. We have gone to Chris Bolt with DTC. This is based primarily on a severe financial difference between what Durbin was charging and what Bolt was charging, over $100 an hour difference. So that's the big change on that. One of the things that was recommended by Attorney Bolt was whoever is the chair of the select board is the gatekeeper for access to the town attorney. That will reduce multiple people asking the same questions and help us control our budget on that. I sent an email to all the chairs and to you, Glenn, making you cognizant of that, giving them the contact numbers and information. And any questions or anything, just give me a call, give me a holler, and we will sort it out. But I just want to make sure everybody is cognizant of the fact that Derek is no longer town attorney. Chris Bolt is. It is a in-depth law firm with extra attorneys, so to speak. They have great subject matter expertise in a number of fields, and I think it will be beneficial not only financially, but in the skill set of the folks working there. So just wanted to make that you all aware of that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Copley House, like, for lack of a better term, have we signed that Mylar?
No, we asked for it to be continued to this date because Derek had needed to review the easement language, which he did accomplish. All they have to do is record it with their plan.
Okay.
So that got squared away in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Membership, I know Jeff Kuchar stepped down. Last month, we left it that Jamie was going to talk to Sean about moving up to full-time. I don't know if that was done, but I guess I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the selectmen that if Sean is not wants to be, and he had indicated previously, he's got some personal plans that he really wasn't interested in it. So I'd like to make a recommendation that Mike we propose that Mike become the full-time member.
I'll second that.
Okay, and all in favor? Aye. Mike, you can't vote for yourself. Okay. Okay, so I guess we would leave it, Hobie, that can you contact Jamie and see what he says about Sean's comments and then because I think we could reach a quorum problem here if we don't.
Only because Sean was.
Yeah.
No, I think if Sean wants to step up, please have Sean step up.
I think he's planning to move it.
I know, but what I'm saying
If
is,
you wanted to do it for 3 months or whatever, but yeah.
yeah, if Sean wants to step up, have Sean step up before you go.
Okay, anybody got anything else? Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You looked at Jeff, but you can't figure.
No, it's been screaming. It's been screaming. I don't know what happened.
Bill,
I don't think he did.
Bill Wade.
He did.
It did.
No,
I think we lost her.
It was an